Hey, this is Tao of Chow with MTG Forge, and today I just want to do a quick video about the Free Deck Frenzy deck that I had made previously. So, as you may recall, if you don't, or if you haven't seen it, you can check out the video. Free Deck Frenzy was a deck I made just completely from cards I found from the freebots on MTGO. So I'll give you a look at it here. So here we have some Blossoming Sands, Llanowar Reborn, sets of plains, Selesnya Guildgates. As you can see, it's mainly green and white. I found I was able to make basically a deck based on counters. Cenn's Tactician was very strong. Condemn was very good. Veteran's Reflexes was not very good, but it fit the theme, and it also targeted a creature, which was really good for Phalanx Leader. So I put that in there. Giant Growth is pretty good. Hero of Lyanna Tower was pretty strong. Hunt Down was a form of removal. Servant of the Scale was really nice, especially because once he gets pumped, if he dies, he moves his counters onto someone else. He doesn't just lose them all. And then all the rest, Seeker of the Way was pretty nice. Well, everything was actually pretty good. There was some great synergies in there. And these are the sideboard cards I had. So Disenchant, Wing Puncture just to target flying creatures, Hunt the Weak for more quasi-removal, Curse of Chains, and Dawn-Glow Infusion against Burn. So I decided to try and go and upgrade the Free Deck Frenzy and see what I could do. Now, I still wanted to keep this relatively budget because I think the point of it was that you didn't want to spend a ton of money building it. So I was able to actually, I think, make a lot of significant improvements on it. So what I did is I took out a lot of the things, like for instance I removed Blossoming Sands, and I just put plain forest in there. I also changed the ratio of plains to forest because later on some of the creatures and stuff will be, some of the white creatures will be replaced with green creatures and so on, and so the balance was mixed up a little bit. I'll go over and show you what I did. Hero of Lyanna Tower is arguably the weakest creature in the deck, so I removed all the sets of her. Seeker of the Way was okay, but I found some better things. Abzan Falconer was still pretty good, but I think I removed one or two. So let's take a look at what I did here. Alright, so let's go sort by converted mana cost. Okay, so you can see I kept Llanowar Reborn in because mainly we're a counters deck, and getting to graft a counter on is pretty nice. It sucks in a way because it's a tapped land, so you still have to come in slow, and this deck wants to be aggressive, but I found it's actually pretty good. It's actually working out pretty good. So there's the forest that I had replaced, bunch of plains, and what I found is Sunpetal Grove. Now, Sunpetal Grove enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a forest or a plains. But as you can see, it's very likely that you're going to control a forest or a plains. So this is actually a pretty nice card to upgrade to. And I believe it's only 0.03 tickets. So it's like super budget land to get in. Kept Servant of the Scale, as you can see. Hunt Down is still kept in there, but I've reduced it to 2. Now, what you can see here is this is almost a must include. Hardened Scales. Hardened Scales is super cheap. Again, it's like, I don't know, like 5 cents or something like that. It's 5 or 0.05 tickets. It's really cheap. If one or more, so what it does is if one or more +1/+1 counters would be placed on a creature, you add 1 instead. Now, so just to be clear, for something like Dragonscale Boon, where it's putting 2 counters, you don't double them. You would put 3 instead. Right? But what this means is that if you have Hardened Scales out, and then you play a Servant of the Scale, he doesn't come as a 1/1, he comes as a 2/2. And if you happen to have Llanowar Reborn, and you graft it onto him, then he becomes a 4/4. So Servant of the Scale can come out as a 4/4 if you have a Hardened Scales out. If you have 2 of them out, things just get ridiculous. Now, I just happen to have these, but I don't think that these are necessary. Path To Exile, it's nice, but there's a lot of other white removal that can easily work, right? But Path to Exile is a nice include. It's the best white removal there is. It's a little on the expensive side. I think it's like 4 tickets or something for each one, but it's not too bad. If you happen to have them, then you can put them in, but otherwise Condemn is just as good. All right. I kept 2 Cenn's Tacticians. especially when you have Hardened Scales in play. Cenn's Tactician puts 2+1/+1 counters on something every time he's tapped, and this again can just get really, really out of control. Another cool thing, and really a strong thing with Cenn's Tactician, is that all the creatures with +1/+1 counters can block additional creatures. So that I found is like just super important, because often you don't have too many creatures out, but you can having them be able to block more than one is really helpful. Okay, as you can see, I kept all 4 Phalanx Leaders, but here I've included Dromoka's Command. Now, Dromoka's Command is the most expensive card in the upgrade set, but it's really, really worth it. It's just the modality of it just makes it super helpful. To be able to get rid of enchantments, it has +1/+1 counters. You can do the fighting. You can see I basically, instead of Hunt Down, it replaces Hunt Down in Veteran's Reflexes and stuff like that, and some Giant Growths. Okay, so it synergizes well with Hardened Scales because it targets things, right? Yeah, it's just such a good card to put in this, and it's perfect. It's in the colors, and it's cheap, like only 2 mana. I think it's 6 event tickets for each one. So like these 4 Dromoka commands like basically cost as much as the whole entire deck, but they're really, really worth it. If you don't have it, that's okay. You can just put Giant Growth on there or something else. What's that, collective? I forget what it's called. Collective something, where it's, instead of putting +1 counters onto 3 creatures, you put them on 2 creatures. That might be a good replacement. But really, this is just gold. You can't really. There's not really anything that's the same. I kept the Reap What Is Sown. Right, so Reap What Is Sown is put +1/+1 counters on up to 3 different target creatures. That's huge. Now this one also, Managorger Hydra. Has Trample. Okay, whenever a player casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Managorger Hydra. That means not just any. It doesn't mean you cast a spell. Anybody casts a spell, and any kind of spell. So if you have this and you happen to have Hardened Scales out, like even without Hardened Scales, Managorger Hydra gets out of control super fast. But if you have Hardened Scales out, it's getting +2/+2 every time someone casts a spell. So if they cast Gitaxian Probe, then you get +2/+2. If they cast, they cast a mana artifact, it gets a +2/+2. It's ridiculous. It basically has to be dealt with immediately, or it just gets out of control super fast. Same thing with Phalanx Leader. These 2 cards draw a ton of hate like right away, because players know, your opponent is going to know that if you don't deal with this, it's just going to be a mess. Abzan Falconer also draws a ton of hate because flying is really difficult to deal with. Having all your +1/+1 creatures be able to fly is just killer. I kept Dragonscale Boon in, even though it's kind of expensive at 4 mana. Put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature and untap it, mainly because of the untap. Right? Because what you can do is you can tap to attack, and then you look like you're all tapped out, and then what you can do is on your opponent's turn is put +1/+1 counters on that creature and untap it, and then use it to block as kind of as a neat little combat trick. Other than that, the only other include was Hangarback Walker. Now, Hangarback Walkers used to be very, very expensive, but because it rotated out, it's not too bad. This is really a gold card. Like be able to put a whole bunch of +1/+1 counters on it, and then when it dies, it just becomes like a whole bunch of Thopters. It's just killer. It's just so hard to deal with. It's just such a pain in the ass. And because you're able to put so many counters on things all the time, especially with Hardened Scales, it just is really, really tough. It's just really tough to deal with. So that's what I basically added. You can see the shell of the deck is essentially the same, and the upgrades I put in aren't really that expensive, except for Dromoka's Command. Okay, but I'd say like 10 event tickets would probably be enough to pretty much upgrade this entire thing, except for, well, I'm not sure about the Path to Exiles, but definitely Hangarback Walker. Managorger Hydra costs like just 3.03 tickets. Hardened Scales is like 0.05 or something like that. You could probably get everything except for Dromoka's Command for like 10 event tickets. Okay, now going to the sideboard, I kept some things the same. Curse of Chains was nice. I replaced Disenchant with Sundering Growth. Now, it's basically the same spell, but it's a little bit easier to cast. Well, I guess it's the same, just white, white, or green, white. Either way, you're going to be casting it with those 2 colors anyways. But I thought it would be nice because it has Then Populate. It basically just does the same thing as Disenchant, but occasionally your opponent might do something where you get a token. You don't, or if you happen to have tokens with your Hangarback Walker, you could get just another token. So it's probably not going to happen very often. I have never gotten a token off of it, but it's actually, it's just something that might happen, and hey, it's strictly better than the other card than Disenchant, so why not? Okay, and it's again not expensive. Curse of Chains is just a nice little bit of extra, well, not really removal, but kind of a quasi removal. Okay, Condemn is still pretty nice. Again, White has lots of ways of dealing with lots of forms of removal. So if you don't like Path to Exile, Condemn is pretty nice. But the only problem with Condemn is it has to be a target attacking creature. Okay, I've forgotten that from time to time, and sometimes they might have a creature that's not attacking; it just has an ability that they keep activating, and that's kind of a pain. So you got to find a way to get rid of that. Maybe an Oblivion Stone or Oblivion Ring or Sunlance would be a way to maybe get rid of it, or something like that. There's lots of other white removal spells. So there's one used in Pauper all the time, but anyway, I forget what it's called. Okay, again, a Relic of Progenitus is really nice for dealing with graveyard strategies, because we really don't have any other way of dealing with that. Sun Droplets I put in for against burn. Now, Ensnaring Bridge is super expensive. It's even way more expensive than Dromoka's command. If I just happen to have them, so I put them in. But if you don't have them, or you don't want to spend that kind of money, that's okay. There's lots of other things you could put in there as well. It's mainly I put it in there for basically against things like Eldrazi or things like that, where you're going to have giant creatures facing you. Usually you don't have you're not going to have cards in your hand for very long, mainly because you're just not holding things for very long. Okay, you just play it as you're very aggressive, so you're just playing things as fast as you can, and you usually have an empty hand. I should mention also Bow of Nylea. Bow of Nylea is pretty nice. I have one of because I just happen to have one, but all your attacking creatures having death touch is really nice, especially if you have your Hangarback Walker turned into a whole bunch of Thopters. Giving them death touch is really nice. Then here, putting a +1/+1 counter on it synergizes well with Hardened Scales, dealing 2 damage to target creature with flying, gaining 3 life. The last mode, putting 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. I've never done that, but maybe it could come in handy. I'm not sure when, but that's pretty much what I did. And I actually like playing this deck. It's pretty aggressive. It's pretty fun. It's really weak to decks that have a lot of removal in them. So decks where you have Black Sacrifice, where Edict type effects, or if they have a lot of board wipes or things like that, then there's really nothing you can do about it. You just gotta aggro it out and hope that they don't have that. There could be some things instead of Condemn, maybe put in Apostle's Blessings or something like that. What's that other one? I forget it again. It's a white card that just gives your creatures protection from a given color till end of turn. But anyways, there's lots of other things you can do in the sideboard. But overall, I'd say Dromoka's command, huge improvement. Managorger Hydra is just awesome. It gets ridiculous super fast. Hangarback Walker, even if you cast it for 1 and then you throw let's say you throw a counter on it with Llanowar Reborn, it comes in for 2. Right, that's still pretty good. If you happen to have Hardened Scales up, it's going to come in for 4, right? And then you can just keep pumping it like crazy. So, anyways, if you have any suggestions or things that you might think are that might go better in this deck, please leave a comment in the comments there. And if you do like this video or videos like this, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe. It really does help to let me know what kind of videos my viewers like to see. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and stay tuned for gameplay videos of this.